Yo, it's Ace. Welcome to the Joint Point Podcast. A lot of buzz online about immigration. Justification has always been, they're not legal citizens. Come here legally. Um, I don't like that framing personally. Um, to me, it's like they're human beings. And look, I'm all for like helping them get like, a driver's license and stuff and social security. I'm all for that process. That's fine. But that should be like the solution to dealing with illegal immigration. And unfortunately, the solution that America has been doing has been treating them like wild coyotes that crossed over into their fence into their backyard. Get the gun, honey. Let's get that fucking dirty animal out of here. That's been like the attitude towards, immigration. That kind of bothers me, because like at the end of the day, they're human beings. We all bleed the same color. We all fucking die and get put in the ground for our corpse to rot away. It's so fucking ridiculous to me that uh people have to like legalize themselves in order to exist among different groups of people. I feel like that's disgusting. And been like the main thrust of the argument of like why we're just like grabbing these immigrants and like sending them to slave camps in El Salvador, and all because, of something stupid, It's like, oh, there's no documentation on this guy, you know, so we have to put him in a cage and send him over to a country he's probably never been to before. It's like, why is this necessary again? Oh, right, because, their picture is not on a piece of plastic, with a state on it. Oh, they don't have a birth certificate. Oh, damn it. They don't have a social security number. They are not subscribed to the same annoyances that Americans have to deal with, social security, birth certificate, driver's license, 401k, jobs, all this shit that we're forced to put up with. If they're not dealing with the same kind of bullshit, then they're criminals. That was just a tangent, by the way. Like I meant what I said, but like, it was just dramatized for attention. But yeah, that's kind of been my biggest issue is just like how, everybody is like, oh, they're illegal. They're illegal. It's like, and unless they're branded with the American logo, um, they're not people in my eyes. That just, it's gross. Um, fuck, I did it again. I forgot what I was gonna say. This is like take five, by the way. Fuck, what was I gonna say? I don't remember what I was gonna say, but you get the idea. I don't like that humans have to like legalize themselves in order to exist in another community. This whole nation supremacy, racial supremacy shit, it's meaningless. It's completely meaningless. Um, you know, I've never understood it. Like growing up, I did, do racist things out of ignorance. I saw it as me being funny, and I never, I had I had trouble considering like the impact it had on other people. Um, Thankfully, I'm not stupid, and I was able to make friends with people of other races. Because I realized that a lot of the mentality of racial supremacy and stuff is just purely based on abnormalities shouldn't exist because you know it uh I don't know, it just It just feels like it's a tribal thing. They see somebody and they're like, "Oh man, that person is looks different than me." I don't understand that. You know, I don't know. I'm just going on a tangent again. It just it just feels weird to me. I don't like that society keeps trying to like frame people as like, illegal, right? We all live on the same goddamn planet. I know it sounds like hippie shit, but I don't classify myself as a hippie just because hippies are like anti-medicine and anti-science, and I'm neither of those things, so I can't really classify myself as a hippie. I'm the closest I am to like the hippie is that I'm like, uh completely libertarian when it comes to things like drug use and religion. So, it's just I guess I am libertarian in that sense, but like economically I'm pretty leftist. Um Not communist though. Like there is a difference. I don't believe in communism. I think communism goes too far. Um I feel like under communism, the idea being that everyone's labor, as long as you're like, contributing via labor or something to society, then you'll receive all the benefits of like your labor and stuff. That's like, that's like a teenager's interpretation of it, but I mean, that's basically what it is. As long as you contribute labor to society, you'll get to, live the life. The problem I have with that is that if you're like disabled or have mental health problems, stuff like that, that kind of makes you a second class citizen since you're like disabled or have like mental health issues. Um, there's also a lack of individuality under communism. Everybody has to like agree and agree and think the same. Otherwise, you're like a threat to the people, kind of stuff. So it's anti individuality, and I don't like that about communism. At most, I'm like a socialist. Because at least under socialism, it just means that labor rights are stronger. And people own the rights to their own labor, and companies would basically have to like put more effort into getting people to work for them. I feel like that's why socialism is evil to them because they just want to be able to force people to work for them rather than just try to convince people to work for them. Because like a lot of people, a lot of you know, uh, popular podcasters and stuff are pissed off because a lot of people aren't working, especially like the younger generation, like teenagers and stuff. And it's like, what's the point? You know, um, working, a low wage job doesn't really get you anything. All the bills, housing, and cars and car insurance, all this shit is so fucking expensive, and you can't really afford anything. And people look down on you because of that. That's the weird thing to me. Like, is money really like the wall that we've built around ourselves? We we've built an entire wall of money in order to hide our insecurity. It's just fucking weird to me, man. I guess the controversial thing, socialist thing or probably communist thing, I don't know, that I have would probably be that I would set like a wealth cap. You know, I don't think a billionaire class shouldn't be allowed to exist. I feel like that's once again too much power for one person to have. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, no, they're not actually worth billions of dollars. That's just like their stock market value. It's like, okay, but like their personal wealth, it may not be like, the 500 billion in stock market value, but they still have personal value of like billions of dollars. Like even if it's only like $50 billion, that's still like $50 billion. Like nothing on earth costs $1 billion. Nothing does. You know? It's fucking ridiculous. Like the whole point of getting money, right? The whole dream of like having all this money was so that you could like have the ability to achieve any life that you wanted. Um, you'll be able to like fly to any country. I feel like once you hit like the $1 billion mark, you should like be qualified for immediate retirement, and you you know and then that's it. The $1 billion is yours, but you can't have any more money after that whatsoever. That's pretty much what I would do, is just make it to where like once you reach like the $1 billion mark, any income after that will be forced back into the economy. Um, because once you've reached $1 billion, you've truly, achieved economic freedom, to go to any island you want, build anything you want, live wherever you want, have whatever you want. That's like what $1 billion does for you.
I would also get rid of private jets. That's kind of like another socialist thing that I have, is that I would get rid of private jets. Nobody should be able to afford a private jet or have a private jet. And they're actually like the main contributor to climate change anyway. So you get rid of private jet ownership, uh, you'll see carbon emissions be cut like 58% or some shit. A lot of justification for private jets is stupid too. It's like, oh man, they don't fly my schedule. And it's like, well, schedule better then. You know, I mean, it's not that hard, right? Well, I have a job. I'm trying to spread the message of the Lord. It's like, you don't need a private jet for that. Again, you can just reschedule, you know, but, a lot of them look at, public transportation, like Kenneth Copeland looks at it, where it's like, oh, they're a tomb of demons. They do view them, types like Kenneth Copeland and shit, they view themselves as like a superior race, and it's because of superficial shit like money. Money is nothing. It means nothing at the end of the day. It's like what? It's paper or ones and zeros. It doesn't serve any uh, practical use whatsoever outside of like, you know, uh, uh, societal worth, basically. I don't know. I'm just rambling. Um, Again, like I said, my main point is just I don't like how we frame, illegal immigrants, and I hate that we're like treating them as like subhuman because of their status. Human beings shouldn't have like a status. They should just be individuals, and they should be allowed to exist as human beings. Their status should not be a crime. That to me is absurd.